Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys joining for a little talk here in the garage, because we're going to be talking about two things that you hear me talking about all the time: water clarity and water temperature, and the relationship between the two. Because guys, if you follow my channels, all three of my channels, I probably sound like a broken record. I'm always talking about water clarity, water temperature, water clarity, water temperature. They are the two most important variables in understanding how to catch bass, and the technique that you need to use, and understanding how the bass are positioned and how they bite. So I want to get everybody on board with just always keeping that water temperature and water clarity, those two factors, in the forefront of their minds. It's going to help you catch so many fish. So we're going to get into that in today's video. Also, guys, a couple quick housekeeping tips just wanted to pass along to you. Just like to invite everybody to please hit that subscribe button here to Advanced Bass Fishing. It's free and easy. You can also sign up to become a channel member or a Patreon member by going to my homepage. And I appreciate everybody that's been using all the links I put in the description, especially my Tackle Warehouse link for your tackle purchases. Really appreciate that. Okay, water temperature, water clarity. You can, that's all you need to know, really. It's like you can just, if you can take me anywhere in the world bass fishing, any lake in the world, and say, Randy, we're going to go to this lake you've never seen before. Here's the water clarity, here's the water temperature. That's all I need to know, and I'm going to be able to catch some fish, and I'm going to be able to fish the techniques I need to use to catch those fish, because those are the two primary, gears that determine what you need to be doing. And there's a lot to it. I mean, there's a lot of different variables as far as the amount of water clarity and the temperatures in relationship to each other. So there's literally hundreds of different possible scenarios between the two. Now, on one end of the spectrum, you can have dirty cold water, you can have clear cold water, you can have in between colored clear, cold water. And then as the temperatures warm up, everything else adjusts to that. To the other end of the spectrum, where you have dirty, muddy water, cold, muddy water, and, it just everything in between there. So we could talk all day long about how you need to approach each one of those situations, but I sort of want to give you guys a foundational approach to each particular one. Now, one of the things that I have found out about bass fishing, it's like, it doesn't matter really what time of the year it is. It's like, if you know the water temperature and the water clarity, it gives you a good idea of the depth of fish you're going to be at and the techniques that you need to use. Now, the only exception to this is during the springtime of the year, because during the springtime of the year, the fish are just behaving differently. They're wanting to spawn. They're really weird at times as how baits they want to hit and baits they don't want to hit. So that's one exception to the rule. But for the most part, here's what you want to do. It's like when you're talking about terms of water temperature, look at your water temperature first. And this is going to give you a good indication of some possible techniques that you're going to use. And then once you figure out what your water temperature is, add in that variable of the water clarity, and that's going to give you a good advantage on like the colors that are going to work best, profiles, and anything that goes with it. So say, for example, if you have cold, clear water temperatures in the 40s and water visibilities over 4 foot, cold, clear water. This is just a really good foundational, time to throw like a little small swim bait, a jerk bait, an Alabama rig, something finessey like that. As the water gets warmer, like it gets into the 50s, and you still have clear water, that opens it up to a couple different other things. The crankbait can come into play. The jerk bait is still working. Maybe some other baits like a little finesse jig or a shaky head or a drop shot or something like that could work out. As the water gets even warmer, like in the 60s and the 70s, and it's still clear, then you have even more options. Things like big swim baits, like the 6 and 7 inch swim baits, the glide baits, the topwater lures, all that comes into play. Flukes, floating worms. And then, when the water's hot and clear, like in the summertime of the year, then the fish are probably going to be deeper most of the time. Your bottom baits, like your jigs and your shaky heads and, big worms, stuff you can fish deep could be good. There could be a lot of fish suspended, above the thermocline. So the cycle goes on and on. Now, as the water temperatures and the water clarities change, you start to get in a little bit more off-colored water or dirty water. Then you have a complete shift in mood and the personality of the fish. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the extremes, and then you can fill in the blanks in between. So we just covered the correlation between water temperature, water clarity, all throughout the seasons for clear water. Now let's talk about if the water's dirty. If you have cold, dirty water, that's the toughest fishing condition you're going to have. And the first thing you have to realize about dirty water or muddy water is the fish are always going to be shallower. They're going to be more predictable because bass will not suspend as much or use deep water as much if the water's dirty. So therefore, you've eliminated a lot of the lake. You don't have to fish over 10 foot deep or even over 5 feet deep if the water's muddy. So that puts you in shallow water right off the bat. So when you're in shallow water and the water's dirty, it's like the areas aren't as complex. It's mainly a bait selection and an adjustment within the lure selection. So if you're fishing colder water that's dirty, you got to use those larger profile lures that displace water and make a little bit of noise. So therefore, when it's muddy and the water temperatures in the 40s and 50s, some type of a shallow running crankbait can be good. A lipless crankbait can be good. A spinnerbait, a chatterbait, something that the fish can find in that little bit off-colored water. Now, as the water gets warmer and say it gets into the 60s and 70s, that gives you a few more options as far as your techniques goes and your colors, because as that water warms up, and even though it's still muddy, that opens up some other shallow water techniques. Again, crankbaits are going to be good and your spinnerbaits and chatterbaits, but that opens up different types of crankbaits. Maybe more of a shad pattern can work, maybe some smaller crankbaits if you're fishing around shallow objects, a swim jig, pitching and flipping a jig, a creature bait, anything that you can target for that shallow water. And it goes on throughout the course of the year, and everything else in between. When you have water visibilities that are average, in my opinion, most average water visibilities are in lakes across the country is like 2 to 3 foot. That's a good baseline for what a lot of lakes have. So it's sort of a combination between the two. I just gave you the extremes. So when you have average water visibilities, then that's something you sort of just have to experiment with a little bit about bait profiles, bait colors, and the diversity of different type of water that you can get into. If there's from what I have seen when you're talking about water clarity and like fish using deeper water or being suspended, there's like a mark of about, say, 3 to 4 foot. Once you start to get into that 3 to 4 foot of visibility, you start having fish using a lot different water columns. And if you got 3 to 4 foot of visibility, you may have some bass in 25 or 30 foot of water. You may have some bass suspended. You may have some bass shallow during that whole range of things, just depending upon the fish. So then you have to make your adjustments with your techniques and your colors based upon the water temperature in correlation with that. So this is not something that you're going to learn overnight. This is something it's going to take experimentation. It's going to take time on the water. It's going to take just a little bit of creativity. You might go back, guys, in my intuitive angling page over there, or YouTube channel. I got a bunch of stuff on bass movement, behavior, and seasonal patterns. You might refer to some of those videos. We get a little bit more specific, but that's just sort of an overview of it. Just keep that in the front of your mind, guys. Water temperature, water clarity, always be thinking about that, and it'll really help you become a better angler. So hope it helps out. We'll talk later.